yeah, tell me, I'll start, and then go around the room and tell me kind of what your experience is, and if there's anything specific you want, especially you, if you were gonna stay for just a little bit, let me know if there's anything specific you had questions on. Like I said, so I'm Lisa Boe. I was gonna say Lisa Boe with Keller Williams. Yes, I am. I have been in the business since '04. So I started down in Phoenix for a couple years. Lived there for 3 years. Before that, it was banking, not mortgage, but business banking, and I did a lot of construction loans. So then I got into real estate down in Phoenix. So '04, '05, when the market was crazy. Down there, and my mom was not happy. Nobody's happy in Phoenix, and I was not happy in Phoenix. I hate sledding, so we moved back home to Minnesota. And I called up Ed, who was over here, and I'm like, okay, I'm coming. FYI, here I come. So I didn't even look around. So then I was with 18 for a little while. 2-3 years, I can't remember now. I started on a team and moved here on my own, joined a team, then got off the team, been on my own ever since. So at least 10 years. So, rode the roller coaster, had fun. And it's so exciting, so yeah. All right, Margie, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be good. But I'm Margaret Weinigans. I'm new to the Wilson team. About a month and a half now. I think I'm about to get my first assistant. I'll call her again after this. But other than that,
All right. So anything specific you want to know?
nope.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
I'm Savannah. I'll be with I don't have to. It's actually my first day here. I just finished like my testing last Thursday, so don't really have much experience. But
Now, are you going to be doing this then, or consulting agents, or what's your role?
so I'll be an agent, and then I'll also do the shows.
I also just took a test.
Hey. Today.
I'm boarded a couple weeks ago.
There.
Took my test yesterday.
Oh. Good job. Yeah. Wonderful.
I'm Carrie Ann Rock with the Super team, and I've been licensed since August. I've done this thing, and for that I was in
Ooh, thank you. Got a little burned out doing COVID then, and
very
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, welcome.
Need to do
Yeah. We are still, it's still caring for people.
So are you teaching Minnesota or Wisconsin?
Minnesota. Okay. Yeah.
You're licensed.
Yeah. I would never teach. No.
Oh, shoot, I was like, let me know when you're gonna teach a Wisconsin class.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of learning on the fly now, but.
That's why I made you all handouts, because that's what I have to do every time I do a Wisconsin.
Oh,
listing.
I
have to
know.
pull out my handouts. So yes, I killed the tree, but this way I think you can kind of follow along. So start with the basics. So we're not going to do a listing presentation. That's a totally different class as far as the verbiage and kind of getting them to sign with you. So this is after you get the yes, let's move forward kind of piece. The only thing I want to say on that is that there's 2 different thoughts as far as a listing. So for your listing presentation, when you get the call that, yeah, I want to talk to you about listing my house. Some agents do 2 visits listing, and some agents do 1 visit listing. I always kind of just roll with it and try to be off. So even if they're like, yeah, I want to talk to you about listing my house. Training, you never can know, especially if they're texting and you're like, sure, I'll be there tomorrow morning. You're like, I still bring all the forms because if they're raring to go and they're not ready, then they can be like, oh, show people I learned this right now. This in your house, I didn't have the forms. Can I come back? And then they'll be like, no, you're not gonna talk with me, but I'm ready to go. So I always just bring the forms. Maybe I don't take them, but bring them. Sure. And I do bring them, but I do bring them and don't do them on the computer because I feel like this is important stuff enough that you need to sit down and talk to them about each of these things. Otherwise, if you just send them the offensive sign thing and they click, 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 you're not gonna have to write anything. And when the deal goes sideways, and you're like, I didn't know that. Well, you signed the agreement. As you know, what to teach class is what the wolves and the lambs, they still give you that line. So we're gonna be in the wrong, right? You didn't tell them that. So I still strongly encourage them to go with them in person. Even in Zoom days, I still sent it to them and did it page by page. I'd rather discuss it at least now, so if things do happen, you're like, remember when we said that? All right, so, yeah, so there's 1 time, 2 times closed. Then what I also do is go and I go into the tax in here and I pull up the people. So I've got somebody here. What I printed you out was somebody there again that was supposed to be selling. Months selling. Third. Then you can pull it up that way, or if you know their names, you can try it by name. I've had not so good luck with the name because sometimes they're like one of those, you know, Mary Catherine kind of people, and they go by Katie, and then you'll never find Mary Catherine Olson because you'll be looking for Katie Olson and you'll never find them. So when you're like, where am I meeting you to list your house, then you should have their address. And that should be a little easier to find. So I go in here. There she is. So for instance, she's now Kelly Eisenhower, but she bought it before she got married, so we would never have found it by her name that way either. And then I bring it up. I'm not gonna like this clicker. Yay! Yeah, Marjorie knows Kelly. So I like to print this off and bring this to them as well. It also kind of shows you down here what their square footage is. So when you're doing comps, go by the square footage on the tax records. It's not always accurate, but to me, then I tell them, like, for instance, maybe they built a 4-season porch on the back, or maybe now they've finished the basement and that's not showing up in the square footage. Or they're like, no, I don't have 950. I thought I had more like 1,200 on my main level. Like, well, do you have, then I said, do you have an appraisal from when you bought the house or refining? Some people are like, yes, I do. And then you can get the square footage from the appraisal, because the appraiser to me is more like kind of guy. So then I will use that. Otherwise, I say, no, we have to use the tax. And then nowadays, it's the population square footage too. You can kind of eyeball it. It's pretty close. You might as well go into that. You'll see on the MLS in the agent remarks a lot of times where they'll say buyers have to kind of confirm the measurements. And that's why, because there's been lawsuits about whether the measurements are accurate, right? So that's why I just use the tax ones, because that's me and takes it out of my hands. So 950. So where this is kind of over by 3M. So they're all those little cottage homes, just like in Cottage Grove and stuff. And then you'll be able to find actually comps easier too, because there's only like 4 or 5 floor plans, and so they all have pretty much the exact same footprint, so it's like 948, I think, most of the time, it's 950. So then when you're looking for comps, you can find the other ones that have 948. Then you'll kind of know what floor plan you're dealing with before you get to their house to build comps. So that's helpful. And then you never know how well their basement is done, or if they still have the 1950s kitchen or not, but at least you'll know kind of what floor plan you're getting into. So I do bring this and print it off and show it to them with my comps too. Say, see, this is what people will be able to bring up when realtors are looking at your house and they want to check tax records. And then it also has this information, which is one of the fields that we need to fill out as well. So, and it's also got this, which I find very helpful as well. Oh, here we go. Okay, so down at the bottom of this page, it's not scrolling, no, I don't know, is yeah, it says how much which will be good nowadays. It shows how much they also bought it for. So now as the market's shifting and they bought it 2 years ago, you can see already if they're going to be upside down or not. So you'll be ready for that conversation. Or if they bought it in 2013, then they're making lots of money and they shouldn't be as big. But here it's got this, which is another field that we need to fill out. What's the dimensions of the lot? So that's already on there for tax records as well. So handy dandy, easy, nice piece of paper. So that's again was under tax and the real list. Also on that page, you can also verify, because one thing you're going to want to know as well is if there is a road assessment. Because as we all know, there's been a lot of, especially in Woodbury, a lot of roads that got put in the last 2 years. Like everybody got a new street in front of their house. Oftentimes when they get assessed for that. So sometimes they won't remember that, or when you're driving up and you don't see a nice, shiny, nice black street, then you need to remember to ask them to get assessed for a new street. And then sometimes they'll remember and sometimes they won't. But you'll need to know that because on the net sheet, oftentimes when you're writing an offer, will go that the seller will pay, seller will pay, seller will pay, seller will pay, those 4 questions, and we click the 4 seller, 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 one of them is special assessment. So if they have a $3,000 special assessment for roads, which is often the case, that's $3,000 off their amount at closing. So here again, as prices soften, or if somebody just bought and sold and their margins are going to be slim, having that $3,000 less than what you were expecting, they're not going to be happy at closing. Better to have that conversation now and set the expectation than to have that discussion the morning of closing when they're mad because they know they have to pay that $3,000. So from this form as well, if you click on here, it takes you right to the county tax records. And again, not in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's weird, but in Minnesota here. So then it will say exactly how much their special assessments are. Yeah, so they're getting $200 a year. So my guess would be that's the annual payments on a new road, would be my guess. So if there's any special assessments, sometimes it's $90 or $80, especially in Woodbury. There's Washington County Water Department or something, I don't know. And they all have it. It's just reassessed every year. So if that's it, and that's not a road, that's just normal. Don't worry about that. But if you see anything else in here, then it's worth the question if they got on your road. All right, so that's a heads up for that. Then here, all right, so then we're ready to go into the transaction desk. I don't know if you guys played in that yet or not. Very fun. here it is. So what I have done here is you go in and there we go. You go in to create a transaction. And you have the option of either doing it where it looks in the MLS for the address or by the tax records. I never trust my fellow realtors on anything. No, I do not go by the last MLS because that means you're banking with everything that Joe Schmo from 5 years ago did everything accurate and everything's only in yours. So if you did it wrong, then you're wrong. I don't like that. So then you can do it by the tax ID number, which there again, you get all from handy dandy little, that's that number. And then that will pull from the tax records rather than not. There we go. That import data. So I go realist. So it would be Ramsey County and then the tax ID number. That's what I would suggest. So then after you do that, you don't, it has 4 other screens like mortgage date and blah, blah, blah. You don't have to fill out any of that. Just exit, next, next, next. Just get all the way through it. It doesn't help you in any way. So then we're at the forms. Yay. So the very first form is kind of a cheat sheet. I think I changed it sometime this year, but it's a nice little cheat sheet. So most of the time you're going to be doing existing residential, right? And it has every form that you're going to need. Down to the disclosure statements that's applicable, well, the map and the septic sewer, that's only then if you have property in Afton or out further where there's going to be septic well. Otherwise, nothing else except for your time of sale inspection and your point of sale. Those are basically the same things. Oh, the TISH. Anybody talk about that? There's certain cities require it. It's a city by city thing. Powell is one that requires it. If you don't know, you can even go Tish cities in Minnesota or something like that, and they'll pull up. And if you do have to have it, I think all that, you have to have the Tish done by the, which is an inspector, and it has to be available by the time you list. So, you know that as you're discussing with anyone market as well. The TISH inspector is, it's a checklist that the city came up with, so it's not our traditional inspection. So if you get a TISH inspection, you can't say, yep, it's a pre-inspected house. So the TISH inspector is there for 20 minutes, maybe. Like he's got this checklist and just don't say Paul what their favorite things is, but numbers of houses. But that's the kind of inspection that they're doing, not like. So you have to have that available if they have any required. Again, each city has a different thing. If you get an R or an H or something, read the form, and if they have something that's bad like that, they have to fix it before they close. Just a heads up on that. So that's the checklist. So if you're wondering what forms, that's it. But handy dandy on transaction desk, all the forms also come up that you would need, including some you don't need, because there again, we don't need the location map because that's a little blank piece of paper where you write where the well and septic are. We're not going to talk about that today. Or the well when it was last done, or the septic, or the meth. So if they did meth in their house, then they have to disclose that. And then there's a meth disclosure, which then you have other issues. So you have to have either the seller's property disclosure statement or the alternatives. You have to have one of those done by the seller. This is the regular disclosure statement. As the buyer, you're gonna wanna see that lists everything that's wrong with the house since they owned it. So, I like to give this to them early on. There again, I'm actually going this afternoon to talk to people about listing their house. I already emailed it to them. I gave it to them when we first talked about it because they've been in their house for 30 years. And it's hard to think about all the things they've done to your house in the last 50 years. So this is a disclosure statement for that reason. Mostly everything they've ever done. So if they've had water in the basement, they say, when did it happen? What did you do to fix it? Has it happened since? That's what I tell my people. When in doubt, disclose is what we always tell people. When in doubt, disclose. 90% of the times people do, it's because of non-disclosure. So just have them write it down. Yep, we had mice in the basement like 10 years ago. Great, just say that you had mice in the basement 10 years ago, had a pesticide guy come, have a neck problem. State the facts, when it happened, what you did, any problems. Nice and short. Otherwise, it gets to be page-long description of, because the downspout got kicked off when my kid was mowing the yard. I tell him all the time, but he did it anyway, blah, blah, blah. Then we got that water in the basement, blah, blah, blah. So just water in the basement, downspout was kicked off. Downspouts now more secure, no problems. Yeah. Most of the time buyers want to buy the house, so once they hear that, they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll just have to make sure that downspout doesn't get kicked off from, the yard. We'll still buy the house. But later, when that downspout gets kicked off, and then they get water in the basement, and then they find out there was water in the basement before, because you can see the water stain, then they'll sue your sellers because you never told me there was water in the basement. What the heck? You lied to me. And then they sue. That doesn't matter. You have to disclose. So that's that one. This alternative is when they're not telling me anything. So people have gotten away with that in the last market because the sellers had all the power. But now as the market softens, people want to know. So really the only time that you should use this is if like it's a rental property, so the owners don't know really what all has gone on in their house. Or it's an estate, so grandma did in the house. Or I've been working a lot with grandmas lately, and then it's a discussion. Grandma can't be so, like grandma's having trouble remembering last week. So I had that conversation with broker, right? But it's like, well, all you can do is disclose what you know. So one time I did do the alternative just for that reason, but otherwise they just disclose what they remember. And it does wave kind of a red flag to buyers, like, you're a normal family. Why are you doing an alternative? What are you trying to hide and not tell me? As realtors, we're supposed to, if we know of it, and even if they do the alternative, we have to disclose it. So
Would it be too, the one where they never lived in it?
right, yeah, right. It's an investment property. Yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when we bought our house, it was, they own multiple properties, but it was rented to the University of Minnesota as a group home for 25 years.
Yes.
So they just sell it, they maintain, we have no idea.
I mean, so even if it's like I own a condo, but I don't know really what my rent is. I know nobody called me for it fixed, right? But I don't know what else went on.
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of what it's really for. So most of the time, just have your seller's property disclosures with them. And we can help them with that because that opens you up to liability. It's what they know, right? So you can't prompt them because then when they get sued because they didn't disclose, well, you never asked me that question. There's lots of different thoughts to that. Some people say the seller's property disclosure. Definitely no. Certainly not in your hands. Fill it out. All right, so that's my little spiel on those. Any questions so far? It also has the agency in here that you should have, like, anytime anybody ever wants you to talk real estate, you're supposed to have them sign, right? So even if you're not having them sign the rest of the listing agreement today, theoretically, you're supposed to have them sign the agency disclosure at least that day. And it's got, but if you're doing a buy sell where they're going to buy with you too, and you already have that buyer paperwork signed, and then you have the agency signed, you don't need to have them sign it twice. So if they're buying and selling with you, they just fill out that agency disclosure once. So how I usually then start out is with the listing form, listing contract, right? So that is the contract. When you've done it and put it in with Realist, it pre-fills, I think, what you guys have printed out on here. So it should have the lot 26 block 4 that should already come out. So, oh, did I already have it filled out for you? Where's it blank? Oh, good. Yeah, so this should already pre-fill the lot block. I think the seller's names you have to put in. Like April 19th, this is the last time I taught this class. April 9th, which I thought was listing their house that week. I didn't. So April 19th, like today it would be October 19th. Then the contract starts today, and then however long you want to do it. I would say you do it at least 6 months, if not longer. Telling them that, of course, you're assuming you will get it sold before a year or 6 months, but better to have this done so we don't have to redo all this paperwork again. Oh, okay. The price, when I print this up, I leave this blank because I let them choose the price with me recommending something. And then the term. So cash, FHA, VA, conventional financing. That's pretty much the same thing. Same all the time, unless you have a property that's got a lot of fuel things. So if it's old grandma's house and she has a fuel paint everywhere and it's January, you're not gonna be able to get that thing. That means it won't pass FHA. So don't put FHA down, and then in our forms in here, don't put FHA. So when you're buyers, that's one thing you can look for. If you're wondering if it's an old house, how bad is it? And they don't list that they'll take FHA financing, that's kind of giving you a heads up. There's either mold or peeling paint. Or they just don't know. But it kind of is a red flag, so when you do go for the showing, make sure you're looking at you're an FHA buyer, which we'll get more of now. FHA rates are better than conventional rates. That would be something to watch for. No peeling paint, no gold, no cracked outlet covers. Need stair railing. Or if the roof is like creepy haunted house roof, or curling shingles, FHA won't take that either. So that can be a hint on the condition of the property. So if yours is that way and you're not going to be able to paint or do any of that stuff, don't list FHA or VA. All right, so then this box. I just do yes, yes, no, no. So we're going to put the listing on the internet. Seller, yes, we are. We're going to have the address of the house on the internet. Yes, we are. But we're not going to allow any automated valuations, and we're not going to let people to write comments or reviews. And they're like, of course we're not. Right. Then listed for lease. There again, most of the time people aren't thinking about this. And especially now with the shift, they're like, our house is gonna sell in a weekend. I know it, because my neighbors did. Right now, you don't have any lease, right? Like, cousin is leasing the basement, right? No, and we're not going to list it or rent it while during the listing process, are we? Not planning on, right? No, of course not. Well, then 4 months from now, well, they might be thinking, maybe we'll just rent it out while we. We're in an agreement that you're not. If it is, if it's an investment property, then yes. But then you also need to know what the lease terms are. Well, I'm sure you remember that the lease stays with the property. So if the lease is good until April 30th and you have it on the market now, the buyers can't move into that house. Good to know for those buyers. Right? So you might as well put that in the listing because it's going to come up somewhere along the line. So you might as well be before the buyers look at it rather than after the contract. So that's where you can verify, no, it's not listed or it is, then good. Can I get a copy of the list of the lease? You will get questions. And this is just all boilerplate. They're going to give us access to the property. We're going to get duplicate keys. Broker compensation. So retainer fee of 0. You can decide how to do your business. If you want to charge a retainer fee, and that's great. Go ahead. I know some of the other offices, but the other brokerages used to do a retainer fee, and now as things go down, maybe they're going to try that again. So basically, that would be, yeah, pay me $1,000 today to list it, and then I'll list it, and then I'll pay the compensation. So that's not normally how people do it, but that's how you start to do your business. That's great. That's how you put it up here. Retainer fee is paid now at the commencement of this contract. Otherwise, compensation is paid at closing. And that is totally up to whatever you negotiate as well. Most of the time, people don't put a dollar amount in here just because they're going to probably see on the MLS, then it'll be 2.7% to the buyer broker, 4 or 5. But 2.7%. So then it can get convoluted. If you put like $5,000, like how is that cutting in for 2.7? Too confusing. Just keep it a percent. If they say that's fine, but you know what? My neighbor's daughter really wants to buy the house because the neighbor's friend or relative always says they want to buy the house. Don't worry. So just say, great, perfect, that'd be great. That's what a great opportunity for you. If the neighbor's niece comes and buys the house, let's get her name and then you can negotiate. So if neighbor's niece, Sarah, comes and buys the house, will you still want me to help you with your side of the paperwork, or is Sarah going to do it all and you're just going to take what she gives you, or how do you want to do that? Right. So okay. Well then, if neighbors meet Sarah buys it, then maybe I'll just charge you that 3%. Okay, that's fair. Then we won't pay Sarah's broker. Right. I'll be your agent. Okay. That's or if Sarah do it for 1,000 or whatever you negotiate, you can write that in. Or if they find, sometimes people are like, well, I know a lot of people, and a lot of people love our house. If you bring the buyer, fine. If you bring the buyer, then I'll charge you for it. So anything weird like that, if they bring that up. However you want to run your business, that's how you would write that in. But yeah, in my experience, they always think everybody wants to buy their house, but when it comes down to it, oh, Samantha, let's buy your house. more. So, that's where you would put that stuff. There again, just overcoming their objections. Great. Because if it does happen and they do get the neighbors and then you don't even need to market it, you're just helping them with the paperwork. That's nice too. Great. So this part I also say, so if all of a sudden you do find somebody, one of your friends, this just says that you're not gonna like fire me and then go sell it to somebody who saw the house and kind of went around. Right? You wouldn't do that to me. Oh no, never. All right, so this just says if somebody looks at the house while you have it listed, within 6 months that buyer can't buy the house or that those people have to pay. Because they still found that buyer for them. Right? You can't find the buyer for them. Then they're like, hey, you're fired. And then they go around and find them on Facebook and reach out. Still want to buy the house? No, then you pay. And there again, the people are usually like, I would never do that. But when it comes down to it, they might just think about it. But you've already talked about it, and they put that they would never do that. Right. Of course you wouldn't. All right, then the compensation disclosures. So out of the 6.5% then that you're buying me or paying me, seller, 2.7% of that is going to the buyer's agent. At first they're like, 5%, that's pretty high. Well, that's because on the sell side, you pay both sides. When you buy with me though, then you don't need to pay me anything. Yeah, so on the sell side, you pay the whole amount, and then I'll pay the buyer's agent. And then you buy it. Okay. So this is just disclosing to them how much you're going to put on the MLS to the buyer's agent. The going rate is 2.7%. And a word on that. So sometimes people will go at 2.4%, 2.5%. You'll see it. Be careful. But I mean, it makes me mad because they're devaluing our business, right? Just because you could negotiate a higher commission, now you're very frustrating. So, and I have known people, agents in the past, they're no longer agents, but when they would see the 2.4, 2.5%, then they did not, they'd like make them. Right. For that, but already approved that. I'll try. So, yeah, don't try to skim off the 0.2%. Because it might just come back and ding you anyway. And don't be those agents that refuse to show it. Because that's not being an agent for your buyer. All right, then we come down. Oh, and then this one is if cooperating brokers assisting the buyer. So here they're representing the buyer, so they're agents. They're full agents. Here's where they're facilitators. They're just assisting the buyer. So if you remember our Aldi, Lori, Dulce, whatever that thing is, all the fiduciary responsibilities we have, they don't have all of them. They do. So this is the way I run my business, is that I say, if you're not an agent and you're just helping them with the paperwork, then the buyers can pay you. I'm not going to pay you because I'm going to end up doing all the work because you're just sitting in your office just doing paperwork, right? I'm still going to have to let them in for inspection. I'm still going to have to do all that work. So that's the way I run my business. Sometimes you'll see 1% here or there. Again, it's listed on the MLS. On the commissions, it'll say, 2.7% for an agent, 1% for a facilitator. Yeah, I just do 0, but you can put whatever you want. Then down here, this is one of the ones where I get the most questions because especially with the young people that think they were supposed to have researched everything pre-hand. So this just says, I just go, I'm assuming you don't have a title company that you know, love, and trust. And then we get this, Jack, how do I find a title? I'm like, I do have a title company that I know, love, and trust, and I've used for 15 years. They're awesome. So I'm, is that okay if we just use them? Okay, one last thing I need to worry about. Yes, of course. Okay, good. Then check that box and initial there. If they're like, well, I don't know, I want to research, what does this mean? I think this comes about more like outstate in the rural areas where maybe in your small town, you have 2 lawyers' offices and one does half the town and one does the other half the town, and then the people that close, that maybe, my family uses the Schwartz lawyer firm, not the Anderson lawyer firm. Okay, you can use the Schwartz one, fine, whatever. So I think that's more outstate. The people actually already have attorneys set up. And if it's an estate sale and they're like, well, no, this law firm is helping me with the estates and probates and all that stuff, so I'd rather have them close. Most of the time in the cities, you're at the attorney's office. So you can say, well, let's just check on that and I'll talk to them and see if they're set up to close. Because most of the time they don't know all the buyers, all the real estate forms and everything to close on it. They just do that. That would be the only pushback I would see. Thank you. All right, then foreign investment real estate property tax. This is actually very critical and very confusing and never happens. So here you just want to confirm that they are not a foreign person, but they do pay real estate or pay income taxes to it. So even if they have an accent, say they have a green card, whatever, that doesn't make them a foreign person. As long as they pay real or income taxes, then I think they're okay. But that would be a broker Mike question, just to make sure if there is something funky going on. Because if they are not, if they are a foreign person, then there's huge tax implications, like 30% of the whole purchase price or something. Huge red flag, stop everything, talk to Michelle, the other attorney, or broker Mike, or both of them, or whatever. Because that will definitely impact both the buyer and the how much they get off the sale. Then agency. Here again, people might have a question if they have skeletons in their closet or relatives that had bad experiences with realtors or whatever. Here's where I think you'll get to hear all those glorious stories. So agency representative. So here it says, do you agree to dual agency? So if you haven't already had them sign the agency form, then you haven't even had this conversation with them. But here I say, so this just says that if you check yes, then every agent can see it. If you don't agree to dual agency, then nobody in my office can show this property, and that eliminates like 200 agents in this area. So I don't want to lose out on all those buyers because we didn't agree with this. It's dual agency because their boss and my boss would have said, if the transaction goes sideways, then our boss would have kind of a conflict in each camp. They're like, oh, well, that would be fine. I want all the buyers to see my house, but I just don't want you to have both sides. And if you're on a team, maybe they wouldn't want their team to be on both sides. That's another conversation. But here it'd be like, okay, so if you don't want me to be the dual agent, then I just write that kind of down. There's blank lines down here, I think. Yeah, then I just write it in here. So I still agree to dual agency so that it's all of our offices, all the color wills for your agents. Definitely want them to check that they will agree. But if they don't want you to hog it, yeah, then I say that I can write in another part. Lisa will not be a check for buyer. If you have a buyer, then I'll get somebody else.
sometimes they'll have heard horror stories. And there's no change in their mind. And there again, to hog it both yourself is kind of unusual. That's why we celebrate it when it happens. So you can say though that kind of disincents me to sell it though, you know, just in case I do get somebody to call me for my fine or something. But some people have horror stories and their uncle said never to do that. Like, okay. Then if there's anything else weird that they say, I don't know. Like, if they wanted to be off during Christmas vacation or something like that, I still wouldn't put that in here. I'd have them fill out another of our forms. You don't want the contract to lapse during that time. You would just want no showings during Christmas vacation. That's pretty much, shouldn't really be anything else there. But if they have some objection and you're like, never going to happen, why are we even talking about that? Then that's fine. Just write it in that little other so that they feel better. And then this wire fraud alert, I tell them that they're going to sign this form about 6 times in the entire transaction, but do warn them, it's just on the TV show again yesterday, on the Today Show, that they will not be wiring anybody anything during this whole transaction. And the fees that they have to pay will all be done at closing. No money will be wired by you at any point for any reason during this whole transaction. It's more on the buyer side, of course, that it would happen, but yeah, they do sign this form 6 times. All right, any questions on that? That's kind of basically the whole purchase agreement, the whole listing agreement. It's the whole legal. And usually what I go to next is the way I do my business. So what I'm going to have my people sign today is, for instance, they had the painter in there yesterday, but the perfect person is coming next Monday. So we're not going to start showings this weekend until next weekend. I don't know how clean they got it. I don't know where they're at on that. So what I'm going to suggest we do is withhold it for now, because the contract started today, but they're not ready. But I want to get them under contract, signed, done deal, nobody sneaks in, steals them from me, or they sell it to some cousin over the weekend or something. I don't want that to happen. So get the paperwork signed as soon as possible, and then you do this certification of withhold. Then that would be, you know, today and whatever expiration dates from on the agreement, the single family home, and then it's just that you're withholding it from the MLS. So it's indefinitely. It's just. So this is the MLS then telling them, but putting in the MLS is really important. But yeah, I know that was something. So I have to sign that. So that when you submit, do you need to put this into command? In 3 days, 2 days, 1 day? I don't know, really fast, or else you have to have. So you have to put that in, but then you put this in with it. Otherwise it doesn't be live. Setting up showings, and I'm not freaking out because carpet isn't in it. So that has to be done all together. Super easy, but critical. So I do that all the time, like, because my people are never ready. Then I also have them sign this coming soon, which you're not supposed to do right now. But this coming soon then is what? Okay, now we know carpet's coming in on Monday. Let's start showing on Wednesday. Great. And as soon as we know that, we'll put the availability date as but yeah, then on that, when once we know the date that the show will start, I like to have coming soon, as you know, it should start to show riders. It's nice to have an example that's coming on. But you can plan. Good, it's coming on this weekend. I'm available Friday or Saturday. Oh my God, it's available today. We have to see it today. Ah, I can't see today. Oh, you're a loser. You don't love me anymore. So it's nice to have it coming soon. I like to have it coming soon. So if people know today for sure they're gonna start trying on Wednesday, and they'll put it on. Otherwise, I'll just meet you right away. I won't do it. But if I'm not sure and I wanna wait to see how the target goes, and they have to clean more over the weekend, then maybe I'll wait till Monday and make sure, yep, clean over the weekend, and that down, good. Then, okay. Another critical form, and then you just put, oop, you just put that in then on the date that you have it coming soon. So you can't put it in for coming soon next week. Okay, you got it. Coming soon now. All right, any questions on that? So that's all the time. Then when I'm having them sign papers, the next thing I do is this residential listing form input form. So this is kind of the meat of everything that's on the MLS. I just have them sign this first page. And then it's got all this juicy stuff afterwards, but I don't have them redo that because it's like hard enough for others to discern what's supposed to go in all these. Furthermore, they think, especially if they're the engineer reading kind of people, that they think they do have to review every single piece of paper. I just have them sign this and tell them I've got all these pieces of paper and this will be on the MLS. And I found that it's easier for my clients to review it once it's on the MLS. I'll send you the listing, the link, and then you can check my work on there. That way I can make sure my gal has input correctly. Just doing that. Go over that here in a minute, but then the other forms to sign would be this, the Keller Williams disclosures, which is similar on the buy side. Buyer paperwork. So they don't teach this part in real estate classes. This is Keller Williams attorneys at work, I say. So there's one for sellers and then there's one for buyers. So even if they buy and sell for you, they have to sign both of them. This first one I say is my favorite one because it's just says I'm just a realtor. So I don't know your tax implications. I don't know your estate planning. I don't know the zoning changes. I'm just a realtor. So don't sue me for any realtor. Oh, never. Good. Then multiple offer disclosures. So this is critical and they are still getting multiple offers these days, depending on how you price things and the price point of the property. So how do you want me to play the multiple offer? So as a seller, they have two options. They want us to disclose that there's multiple offers, or they don't want us to disclose there's multiple offers. So here's where you get the permission on how they want to play.
Why would they not want you to?
So back in the day, and still has happened, I would say maybe 10% of the buyers are like, once they hear there's multiple offers, then I'm out. I am not getting into a multiple offer situation. And realize you're going to be in a multiple offer situation. But some people are like, oh yeah, I've heard that. So yeah, I don't want people to know. These days, the way I say it, it used to be the case. Now sometimes it happens. However, I like to be one that's upfront and truthful with people. So I recommend that you do that when there's multiple offers, just because then you might get more money than you were expecting. Because then they give you their highest and best, which might be. If you don't, then it might be just. Like, yeah, might lose buyers, but. So most of the time they're like, oh, yeah, okay. But they're again, they've got some horror story in the past, whatever. This is just us asking, it is theirs. So on the buyer side, there's one of these, and it's the same kind of discussion with your buyer then. All I know, on that one, they're saying, all I know is what the other agent tells me. Could be multiple offers, and it's just not us. So that's kind of what we're talking about. And then down here, this other commission payout disclosure, it's kind of the same thing as that's now on the MLS. On the listing agreement now, but it didn't used to be. And this is authorization to conduct open houses. So here again, we want to know if they're up for open houses or not. People have strong opinions from what they've heard. So sometimes they're like, well, yeah, I expect you to have an open house every weekend, both days for 5 hours a day. And other people are like, no way. All my neighbors come in, and all they want to do is just come in and see my house. That's not anybody who comes here. It's just going to be a neighbor. I don't want an open house. Whatever. When they say that, I say, yes, that could be, but you know what? They might love your neighborhood and then they'll go to work and they'll talk about your house and then maybe that's the way we can find. So nosy neighbors are good. Or if they're like, yeah, I want 5 hours a day, both Saturday and Sunday for however long we're on here, then you can kind of have that conversation. The buyer really wants to do their house, they'll roll fund when you have an open house. Or better yet, they'll have an agent that will show it to them and then they'll write an offer. So if they don't have an agent and they're just relying on the open house, then they're this far away from buying a house, or the ones that come with showing the agent. So, yeah, and we all know that we really do open houses because they talked about buyers anyway. So yeah, you want to have that discussion there. The commission, there again, this is where we get permission to charge the broker admin fee, which is $599. And if you don't know, if you get pushback on that, I just say that this is for $599 broker admin fee that gets held by my office, and it's for them for keeping up the records and everything. And I haven't had any pushback, but there again, the market's been so good because they've been making money. That hasn't been an issue. Sometimes if they do throw a little bit about that and you do end up eating it, you can do that, but no, if they don't agree to paying funding, it is on your commission. So the office will just subtract that out of your commission. So it doesn't go in your split, it comes right off the top of your check. The affiliate business arrangement disclosure, this is just the partner's title rents in my building, so the owners of my Keller Williams also get money from that title company. And I have to disclose it, but I don't use that title company anyway, so it's kind of a little point that the government requires us to do that. If you use that, then you just say that's just because they rent our building, so my owner gets money from them. So I have to disclose that. Carbon monoxide detectors, this is a good thing to check. I think I have it on here. So then for your sellers, especially if they are going to have a TISH inspection, but even some of those others inspectors, they're like, "Whoo, I caught you, you don't have a carbon monoxide detector." So then just go to the house again if you didn't initially and make sure they have a carbon monoxide detector on each level, including the unfinished basement. And then the smoke alarms, and they all work in each bedroom, or within 10 feet of each bedroom and on each level. Because yeah, otherwise they will get dinged with that with an inspection, or definitely the TISH inspector. So they can get the carbon monoxide. If they've got the smoke alarm, but not a carbon monoxide detector, they can buy the little plug-in ones, and then they can just plug it into the hallway. And then video camera awareness. So this is where you can ask if they've got any Alexas that are recording, or baby cams, or anything like that, then please have them turned off, or leave a note that baby cam or pet cam or whatever people have these days. We just ask that they put out a notice that that's being recorded. Whatever. And that's something there again on the buyer's side, we have this as well, which is a good thing to have before you sign the purchase agreement or writing out the offer. I have them sign this before, like with my buyer broker agreement on the buyer's side. I have them sign that just so I remember to have that discussion. But we have to keep quiet in the house because Alexa could be listening and they could be listening, even though they're supposed to have little notes. The sellers could be listening to us, so we can't talk strategy. All right, so that is that. Oh, it's 2 o'clock. Didn't drill the form. I have time to go through this one if you guys want to. Do you have any questions so far? Oh. All right. You want me to go through a couple of these? It's kind of the most convoluted form, but it's the one that creates the MLS listing, so it's kind of critical. But to me, it's like very intimidating looking. So here on this one, everything that's black has to be filled in. That's a mandatory thing. Notice for the elementary school, middle school, and high school here, it's Rochester School District only. I have no idea why that's so important to Rochester. So you don't need to figure out what middle school they're going to go to. And this like complex, the subdivision, like in Woodbury here, and we all have our little neighborhoods. If you know it's in Stone Mill, I'd still put in Stone Mill because it's important to some people. And the directions not as critical since everybody uses their GPS, but it is nice to know if you're on like north side of 694 or south side of 694 or something, but just generally put directions in there. This is the tax stuff where I said we get it from that one tax form, including the assessment pending. That just means like they got notification they're getting new roads next summer, but they don't have an amount yet, then you have to disclose that. For buyer broker comp, there's your 2.7. The facilitator comp, that's where I said you can put 0 or 1 or whatever you negotiate. This variable rate comp, that is if you have negotiated where they're like, well, yeah, but if you have a buyer and a seller on it, you do a full commission. Then you have the conversation, well, that doesn't really incentivize a buyer then, like I could go get a full commission, I could get the 2.7% if I tell your neighbor's house, right? I don't think that's what you want me to do. So you can have that conversation, but if they're like, okay, fine, then that's what that is. Variable rate comp is yes. So then they know if you see that in the MLS and you have the buyer in the situation, the offer situation, then you want to find out if if they negotiated, they don't 5% if they brought the buyer, then you know already their buyer is 1.5% better net. Right? So already their buyer is getting more money. So it's kind of good to know that. That's why that's there. This type exclusive right to sell. That's the form that you filled out. Construction status previously owned. In foreclosure, no. Lender, no. No. Search foreclosures again. Potential short sale, that will come up more and more these days. That is where short sale is. That's where they're underwater, so they owe more than what they're selling for. So if the market does start to go too far low, and the people have to relocate after buying last year, they're going to have to pay the difference. They might have to come to closing costs with a check. If they think the bank is going to eat it, that makes it a short sale, and that is a nightmare. So if you are a buyer and see where it's a potential short sale, yes. My advice is just, you're not ready for that. That could be a 9 months before your buyer could even know if they have an offer. That's it. So nobody's got time for that. Owner is agent, they have to disclose that. So if your seller, that's another thing that would be on there. If your seller is an agent, like still owns their, maybe their property management, right? So they got, work at the nursing home or whatever, they're like a salesperson, whatever. If they've got a license, even if they're not practicing and they hired you, you still have to put that the owner is an agent, and you have to put it in the agent remarks. And then on the purchase agreement, you have to make sure that that is also listed on the blank line there. The seller is a licensed agent or a licensed Wisconsin agent or anything that would be disclosed. This is for cabins. It's a seasonal cabin, yearly. No auction, no fractional ownership, no new developments. Here's our yes, yes, no, no box that we had from the listing agreement. Association fee. This is where I get a copy, preferably, or know exactly what their association fee is and what it covers. So that's where you click everything, that it covers the lawn care, the outside maintenance, admin, insurance. Okay. Does it cover anything else? Usually not, but you just want to make sure, because sometimes it covers cable. Sometimes not, but just find that out. And you do need the management association company. So if it's Gasson, whoever their management company is, there again, they've got it on their bill. Because you'll need the phone number as well. So you have to have that on the MLS. Insurance fee is usually 0. It's all included in the monthly. All right, and then this is what I do when I'm then go back later. Usually, or today, I'm going to go measure, right? So you need your approximate measurements of all the rooms, and it's just to the nearest foot. So 10 feet, 4 inches, what I call it 10 feet. 7 inches, then I call it 11 feet. But don't measure like from the door, and then there's the closet. There's the rest of the room. It's just the door, not the closet, because that's what the square footage is. Right? And then you can put every other room. So it's a drop-down menu here. So you can't call it something fun and funky. You have to pull from one of these things. So then you know the difference between a den and a bedroom, right? Or an office and a bedroom. You have to have a egress window for a fireman with a big tank to get out, and you have to have a closet. And it has to have flooring or finished flooring and a finished ceiling. Even if that's stained concrete, that's fine. When you spray painted the rafters, that's finished, right? Yeah, so that's what it takes to be a legal bedroom. Lot measurements, so that I get from that handy dandy tax form. The acres is on there too. The lot dimensions was that map. Land lease, there again, don't ever deal with those. That's a whole nother animal where they've like leased it from the railroad for the last 100 years. And so then there's a land lease involved. So you're not buying the land, it's an asset for fire, for getting a loan on it. It's difficult. Foundation size. So this is where I try to measure. And this is very confusing, so you're just going to have to sit down and think about it. It's got above ground total square feet, above ground finished square feet, below ground finished square feet, above ground total square feet. Just, you'll have to think about it. But just know if your foundation is the 948 square feet, then your basement is not going to be bigger. Your basement might be smaller if they've got those all spaces on those 4-level split things. So they've got space in the basement. So it can be smaller than your foundation, but it's never going to be bigger than your foundation or you have a problem. It could be that you have a 4-season porch, and then it could be the above ground could be a little bigger. The main floor could be a little bigger if you've got the still be odd, so just kind of keep that in mind. Garage square feet. And I always like to put the garage dimensions, because if you have a pickup truck, you know, the pickups with a hitch hardly fit in any garage, and that is a deal killer for so many guys. So if yours is big enough to fit a pickup with a hitch, then you definitely want to put that in there, because I'm a big marketing sell, and I even noticed that on my marketing. Yeah, I think it's 21 feet. The other tricky things are, the exterior, you can click more than one box. So if it's like stucco with brick, make sure you know if it's aluminum or vinyl, because they look the same until you tap on it. I do. Sometimes the steel siding looks similar to aluminum. That's a little trickier, but most of the time it's aluminum. Yeah, if it sounds like plastic, it's vinyl. If it's tinny, then it's aluminum. The basement. So obviously, walkout is self-explanatory. Full versus partial. So if it's just a normal basement, you can call it a full box basement. If it's partial, that to me is one of those where then it shouldn't be the same as the big foundation, right? So you just gotta crawl space. That's in those old houses in St. Paul that don't have basements. They just have the crawl space.
Can you check for a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yep. And if it's drain tiled and sump pumped, especially in the older houses, if they've done that, because you can tell that because in the basement you can see the concrete's been poured along the whole ridge of the foundation, then they didn't put in drain tile. So that's super helpful as well, because everybody knows those creepy old basements get damp and yucky. But if they put the drain tile in, then that should be all good to go. So that's another big marketing. Yay. Something to tell. If it's a wood basement, that is really important to know as well. Oakdale has a few of those neighborhoods. Wood basements were kind of in vogue. I think it's in the 90s. They started doing that. Why? I have no idea, except that it's cheaper. We'll see. They're supposed to be good for 50 years, I think. Well, so it'll be interesting. There is such a thing as a wood basement. They have no concrete. Just wood. We'll see. Good for the buyers to know. That could be sued if you don't tell them that. So, fuel. Most of the time, it's natural gas. If you're out in the boondocks, it could be propane if they got one of those big white canisters, but then the people know if they're paying a natural gas bill or if they have to come get the propane taken. So they know. Parking characteristics here again, I click as many of these as possible as well. Especially if it's a tandem garage, because it'll look like a one-car garage, but really it's a two-car garage because it's 2 cars deep. That's tricky. And definitely if it's insulated and heated, because man caves love that. I definitely point that out in my marketing. And it's usually city water, city sewer. If not, that's a whole nother class. And here again, with appliances, click as many as you can. However, don't click a water softener and then not be a water softener, or you might be buying a water softener. So, I had that done too. So just make sure, and same with the dishwasher. Sometimes you're like, of course it has a dishwasher. And just remember, like I think they have a dishwasher today, but I'm not clicking that box till I double check it. Amenities, self-explanatory. Dining room. There again, some people insist on having a separate formal dining room. Not usually anymore. Main floor or the bathroom situation is critical as well, because they'll want to know, okay, it's a two bedroom, but is that second bedroom up in the half? Is it 1.5 stories? So the second bedroom's upstairs, or is the second bedroom down in the basement? That's a big difference. The master's up in the half story, but the second bedroom bathroom's down in the creepy basement. That's the difference. So you might as well tell them that up front on MLS rather than them having to go do a showing and find out. Nope, we're not gonna buy that. Construction materials, some people are big on that as well. Same with in the basement. That was one of the boxes to check if it was block or poured concrete. If you can figure it out, I would suggest putting it on there. When Hugo had that tornado, like what, 10, 15 years ago, the ones with the poured basements stood up better, the ones with the concrete block there as well. So for a while that people were very cognizant of whether it was poured basement or not. So there again, when they hear horror stories, they might want to know. Fencing, sometimes there again, you can have a chain link fence and then a wood fence and then something else. Just click as much as you can. Circuit breakers, this is kind of critical. So if your people have fuses, those are the little round things. You're going to have a tough time selling that house because insurance agencies most of the time won't even insure it. So the new buyers will have a very difficult time. And then they call that an inspection. They'll come back to bite you. So if I do find fuses, I suggest to the sellers that they maybe get it fixed now and switch over to circuit breakers, or they might, that probably will come up in the inspection. Especially as things get. Otherwise, like I said, if the buyers can't get insurance on it, and they can't get a loan, then they can't close. So you're going to be doing it kind of thing. And it costs, it used to cost $1,000 2 years ago. Now it probably costs $2,000. It's kind of a bigger deal, but it's critical. And there again, 100 amp service. If it's less than 100 amp service, it's hard to get insurance as well. So open up the electrical box, check it, and check to make sure it's 100 amp. More is good. There again, then the guys can get their 220 amp welding plugins or whatever. I think that's pretty much it for the important stuff. Roof age is critical. You just need over 8 years or under 8 years, which they're going to have to disclose on their seller's disclosure anyway. But make sure you put that on there. I think that's it. Oh, and here's where you say if you're going to take FHA. Remember I said about the page. I think that is it for all normal houses. Oh, yeah. And if you do have a condo or a townhouse, make sure you find out this. Like if pets are allowed. Sometimes pets aren't allowed, right? Or they have a restriction. Well, you're going to get a question from a buyer. And if you don't know, then you're going to have to find out later. And if you still don't know, but then when they get 10 days to review it, right? Well, if they have 2 dogs and they find out only 1 dog is allowed, they're going to back out of the deal. Might as well find out now. Put that up in the agent remarks. Click it on here. It makes a huge difference for buyers, and it's not like you can hide it and they won't know. They'll find out, and they'll be too far down the line. It'll be difficult. Yeah. This one. This is something that might come out again. So this is if one of those. A lot of times it's like a house in St. Paul that's all creepy and yucky, but somebody wants to make it all beautiful Victorian-like again, and it's going to cost another $150,000, but they can buy it for $100,000 now, kind of thing. You can get a loan for FHA rehab to a pre-K. If you get those, there's only certain to do it. There are 2 lenders to it, so you kind of have to find one that is used to doing it. It's a lot of paperwork. It's very difficult. Your buyer has to get bids on everything. They can't do the work themselves. They think they're going to do it themselves and get paid for it. They have to get bids on everything, and the lender like writes out the check to HVAC contractor, writes out the check to the plumber, writes out the check to all the people they work. So it's kind of like a line of credit. The old house. So it's pretty slick, but the lender needs to know what they're doing. The buyer needs to know what they're doing. So it's kind of rare unless you get kind of into that investor people who might be flipping it or it's out there. So that's a good question. It's out there. Yep. Anything else? Agent remarks, public remarks. You know that agent remarks the public doesn't see, so if you do have something. Yeah, I don't know what. Sometimes I'll put something. What did I just put? Oh, like if you have a certain closing date, or you know, it's, your buyers have new construction that's going to close in January. So then there you can put, but sellers prefer to have closing after. Whatever you need for there for the agents, that's what you want there. I most of the time do this on a separate Word doc because I need to be in my marketing mind. So I just put that in, and then when I type it on a Word doc and then that in. You can do that too. All right, thanks for sticking with me, guys. A lot of stuff, but at least you've heard it once now. So if you have to do it again, you got cheat sheets. Yeah. Yeah, I would suggest even if you went in and tried to do it on your own house one time. There's also showing instructions, but that's self-explanatory. On that sheet that you have to get filled out. Pretty critical. And the lead-based paint. That needs to be handed in as well, which is stupid. It's part of the purchase agreement, but we have to hand it in the listing. So you don't put a date, you don't put the contract date, so you have one. And all you do is say that the seller has knowledge. Lead paint for 7 days of testing, and then you just have to sell it. Someday they'll figure that out. And not have it on the purchase agreement. All right, lots of information. Thanks for hanging in there.
Not so bad.
Oh. Yeah, exactly. All right, so if anybody has any buyers for Fridley, that's where I'm headed to. List my yeah, right off the University and 61st, kind of by the light rail there. Yep, one of those where I bought, helped her sister buy back in like 2007. I think she bought her house for like $67,000, $70,000 back in those days, because nobody else would deal with those little buyers back then because they were such a pain. And yeah, and since then she just sold that house, made like 150 grand on it. Just sold that house, then I helped her boyfriend sell his house, then they bought a house, and she referred me to her sister. Now this is the other sister. Awesome. Yeah, so I've had quite a few of those that back in the day when nobody would do those little buyers.
This week.
Yeah, I know. It's, I don't know. I mean, you just are respectful to them and love on them like they're $1 million buyer, and they appreciate it. So.
Oh, yeah, start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. They're usually not as high maintenance as the more expensive people. They're just grateful.
Yeah.
You wish you would have known